doesn't bring me any joy in saying that I wasn't really excited for this new Everything Everything album. Put it down to their meh form as of late, or the title for their 6th album, which led to my fiance saying, "What in the NFT is that?" But once I took the controversial opinion and stance of listening to an album before establishing an opinion on it, I'm very happy to say that that initial reaction wasn't warranted. If you know this album, then you'll already be familiar with its unique concept. Frontman Jonathan Higgs creating an AI bot that lived on a diet of 4chan posts and epic old English poems that helped to provide 5% of the album's lyrics. Yet, despite its robotic roots, Raw Data Fuel is a very human record, and easily the most revealing the Manchester art rock outfit has put out. And I'm not going to fool around with this one. Raw Data Fuel isn't just a good album compared to the last 2 records that Everything Everything put out, it's just flat out brilliant, with an endearing exploration of the human condition, along with the playfulness and trademark humour that made Get to Heaven just such a hoot. I could go on all day, track by track, but I'll highlight 2 songs in particular. First is Pizza Boy, which manages to encapsulate an ever-growing fear of mine, the slow, almost invisible acceptance of being part of a system designed to grind you down, and sprinkles in some tongue-in-cheek lines for good measure. Then there's Teletype, one of the best openers I've heard all year, that effortlessly etches its weighty hook and dazzling glitchy beeps and boops into your head, which is rather fitting for a song that revolves around ignoring and trying to forget traumatic experiences that have become a permanent fixture in your meaty, fragile brain. And you can hear these 2 songs, as well as other great 2022 tunes, in the Stay Hydrated playlist, linked in the description. I always thought Get to Heaven would be the albatross around Everything Everything's necks for the rest of their career, but Raw Data Fuel shows that there's still plenty of tricks up there, part of a garment that wholly or partly covers a person's arm. Sorry folks, my review AI isn't quite as smarter as me is. You know that event where people compete in a team to show that they're the best in their given field and show off their talents? It's got big names, there's primary colours. The Disney Channel games. Well, the Smile is sort of like that, each member coming off the back of great achievements to form a supergroup tailor-made for indie heads users. And, you know, I swear I've seen this guy before. Let's put all of that trademark Liam waffling to the side, because A Light for Attracting Attention is a goodie. Speech bubbles would fit snugly on a moon-shaped pool with its orchestra-heavy melancholy. You'll Never Work in Television Again has that Hail to the Thief in rainbows ferocity, and I'm sure by now you're getting the picture I'm trying to paint. A Light for Attracting Attention is inevitably going to have Radiohead comparisons thrown at it. There are 2 members from the band here after all, but when the replication is so refined and rewarding, it's easy to see how people like myself have no issue calling this a fairly good time. More than just a warm-up before the next Radiohead album, though if Tom & Co would be so kind as to surprise drop that album sometime soon, I wouldn't complain. Well, looky here, an album that acts like a Last.fm user's equivalent of the Miller Lode cheat. Joyce Manor have always had a liking for keeping their outings brief but memorable, though some fans, including myself, would say 2014's Never Hungover Again has yet to be truly contested. However, with a return to a sub 20 minute runtime comes Joyce Manor's strongest outing in nearly a decade. Compact and cathartic, 40 Inch to Fresno is a vacuum sealed delight that does not lead the band down any ambitious avenues like Cody did. However, the path it does go down is more fruitful, helping them to strengthen their claim to the power pop throne. It may be an exercise in trying to make your own greatest hits record with completely new material, but with Souvenir, Gotta Let It Go and Don't Try, all acting is good examples of Joyce Manor pulling from their college rock influences in a pretty refreshing manner. Yeah, this is a nice reset that will reward those fans that have stuck by the band. As someone who would consider themselves a bit of a Post Malone apologist in the grand scheme of people who sit in front of a camera and talk about music, it doesn't make me happy to say that this Post Malone album isn't just bad, It's his worst album to date. Whether you land on one side of the Post Malone spectrum or the other, we can all agree that he always tried to keep things interesting on prior projects. I didn't like Hollywood's Bleeding, but Circles is a gorgeous hit, and I can at least respect something like the Ozzy Osbourne Star and Take What You Want. 12 Carat Toothache has none of those moments. The features are bordering on neglectful, especially the appearance of Fleet Foxes, which had me seriously considering if their credit was a Spotify error. The production often feels lifeless and limited, never exercising the playfulness of even his lowest effort singles of the past like Wow, and the lyrics, revealing sure, but when themes about alcoholism and mental health are handled in such an uninteresting fashion, that attempt to pull me in and get invested only repels me more. At the end of the day, I don't feel super comfortable ripping into and making jokes about this album despite my disliking of it. Austin sounds like he's truly struggling, that he's self-destructive, and I think far too many times we've had acts make those feelings clear and they've either been ignored or ridiculed for it. So putting music to the side just now, I really do hope that Austin gets the help that he truly deserves.
I got the guts to take the leap. You gotta trust that I can.
I could go on a tangent about how Penis serve up a pleasant slice of melodic indie pop that, while not groundbreaking, does what it seeks to do satisfyingly, and that fans of bands like the Beth should give a go. Or I could just play this footage of me petting my cat while listening to the opener. Hard to say which one would do a better job of convincing you to give this one a listen. Look, there's no proper practice for when it comes to recommending me an album, but if you're going to, then take a page out of Tom's book, because when he recommended this Real Lies album, he mentioned Burial in the Streets, and honestly, on those two comparison points alone, you could make me listen to an hour-long recording of nothing but dead noise. Thankfully, there was no false advertisement at play. Ladash is a great record that's landed on my lap just at the right time. That's down to this album playing on that feeling of being well distanced from your past, but constantly reflecting on it, regret, nostalgia abound. Something that I guess just comes with getting older, and definitely something I feel myself going through as I tread through the second half of my 20s. The reason that I like Ladash isn't just because it's relatable, it's a really well put together album that, yes, does pull from some pivotal noughties releases, but it isn't just a shallow retread of them. Tonally and aesthetically, it's the perfect companion for some late night walking, as well as some late night reflecting. A song that knows as well as Late Arcades, which closes out with what I can only describe as La La Land's closing dream sequence if it took place at Blackpool Beach. I see nostalgia and melancholy washing over you as the seagulls, much like yourself, scramble for anything that will bring them a bit of happiness. Ladash is an album that I don't think I've completely figured out yet or solidified my opinion on, but therein lies the appeal. 5 listens in, and I do feel like I'm tuned into what it's going for. I do feel the appeal, and with each new listen I'm developing this bond, but I still feel like I've got quite a way to go with it as well, which has me really excited. So if you're looking for a refined slow burner, then there's not much better than Ladash. The biggest album of 2022 so far, well, not in my eyes anyway. Harry Styles' popularity has never been in doubt, but when it comes to the quality of the work, he's always been more of a singles person for me. His albums never really kind of come together in a satisfying way. And I won't beat around the bush, Harry's House doesn't really knock that trend either, but it's definitely the closest that any of his records have come to convincing me. We've got the opener music for our sushi restaurant. Yes, it's energetic. Yes, it's serving Get the Big Taste of Holiday this summer at Asda. And yes, I don't really care for it either way. But after that's out of the way, Harry's House wastes no time trying to make me feel at home. Late Night Talking has Harry's 80s nostalgia playing to its strength, with a chorus that's a permanent fixture in my humming library. Then there's Daylight, which is inspired by Tame Impala in the same way that As It Was paid homage to Aha, but it's still a treat nonetheless. Speaking of which, As It Was, and I'm sure you've been waiting patiently for little old me to talk about this modest little hit and what I make of it, and I'm here to tell you that it is, in fact, good. Maybe even pretty good. It's catchy, interesting, and in the grand scheme of pop hits, pretty unique. On the topic of good songs, I also want to bring up Matilda, which is a pretty great chosen family tune using the canvas of the classic Roald Dahl story. It's an example of Harry being able to make a great tune without any bombast, but sadly, I don't feel like the rest of Harry's House hits that sweet spot like the songs I've mentioned so far do. Once cinema closes out in pretty fun fashion, Harry's House finds itself plodding along, never returning to the impressive heights it climbed in the first half, aside from the rogue satellite with its impressive sucker punch climax. The lulls on both halves do take a toll, but whilst Harry's House may not be on the same pop pedestal as melodrama or emotion, it will still find friends at a table with Happier Than Ever or Sweetener, which isn't bad company at all. I won't lie folks, had this been an album that I had stumbled upon in my own free time and wasn't in fact the highest voted patron pick, I would have brushed it off and not given it the second go that it rightfully deserved. I only knew one thing about this record going into it, that being that it's a long anticipated release coming out 16 years after Gospel Screamo debut effort. That probably explains why I felt a bit let down on my initial spin, as I went into it expecting something a bit harder than the proggy time I had on my initial spin. Had I have written off Loser as some overhyped comeback release, I'd be missing out on a slightly goofy but overall compelling album that addresses midlife crises with a healthy dose of political lambasting, all backed up with these super energetic performances that operate as great workout music and from time to time remind me of Sonic Heroes soundtrack in the best possible way. Granted, I don't think it's canon that Sonic is vocally opposed to older white men's fragility when it comes to claiming ownership over everything but never the consequences of the actions that led to those things, but if you want to live in that world, then check out The Loser. Also, Vector the Crocodile is an anarchist, and no, I won't be expanding on that. This was an interesting one. If you'd told me this was all some elaborate prank, then you would have fooled me, because as soon as Alphabet's Hold Hostage won a place in this roundup, all avenues of listening to it just disappeared. No Spotify, no Apple Music, not even a copy on YouTube, which is why I'm using KO2 footage. I'm not sure if it's a legal thing or the band's decision, but I had to jump through a few hoops to get my ears on it. While that sounds like it would be annoying, it partially was. It had me excited, clamouring for what Again and So Soon could possibly sound like. I was expecting something more akin to Machine Girl based on Journey alone, something that sounded forbidden to hear, but it's not like I'll turn down an indie folk dream pop affair. Was it worth all that effort? Kinda. It's nice, it's pleasant, but it also kind of became white noise to me quite a few times, though it has its moments, especially Temporary Pharmacy, which showcases what I can only describe as percussion played with Guitar Hero's star power on. If that sounds like your kind of thing, if that really speaks to your soul, then you know where to seek it.
Picks me up, puts me down, picks me up, puts me down, picks me up, puts me down.
With what went down in 2020, you know, the whole... It's to be expected that many musicians are putting out music that reflects on their lives both as people and as artists. And already in 2022 we've had some good examples of this, some interesting examples like with Jenny Haval and Kendrick Lamar, and art pop darling Florence Welch is here to join the pensive, pondering party. Granted, a fair few songs on here were written by the start of 2020, but there's no denying that this year's pain haunts Dance Fever, given her struggles for their depth, agony, or respite depending on the track. Florence and the Machine have always had a knack for conducting these moving, cleansing ritual records, ceremonials key amongst them, and Dance Fever continues this lineage in a pretty satisfying way. Girls Against God's a standout, Florence going full Kratos, waging war with none other than God himself as she processes her inability to relive the coveted moments of her days performing live. The scale, scope, and manner in which he captures this grief and grievance is just endlessly impressive. That's only enhanced when she spins this pain into something mythological, like with Cassandra, where she steps into the shoes of the titular character. Sadly, not the skin on a frame Doctor Who villain, though I suppose being the Greek figure cursed to see the future but have no one believe you is more fitting and emotional, I guess. While I'm not sure if that clinical finish on those songs is evident on the rest of the album, this is easily the best time that I've had with Florence and the Machine's music in over a decade, back when I used to listen to them non-stop on my scratch-riddled iPod Touch. It's been 6 years since I checked out Prince Dai's debut record. A fun 2016 release that was juvenile, though thankfully not Jared Alonge fodder. It's evident that since then, there's been a lot of growing up going on, no doubt brought on by a whole heap of personal factors that influence the band's self-titled effort, and we all know what that means for a pop punk outfit. It's time to get serious. Admittedly, most of what's on offer here is more emo than anything, which helps to really add the oomph of a song like Black Mold, an 8-minute long epic that utilises a voicemail cliche in a totally endearing way. There's also Shoelaces, a track about frontman Corey Gregor's month-long stay in a psychiatric hospital due to a function-destroying fear of death. It's also home to my favourite lyric on the project, emblematic of Gregory's ability to summarise overwhelming thoughts and emotions in a blunt, efficient fashion. Sure, maybe the melodrama can mess with the winning formula from time to time, but overall, I'm a fan of this. And any fans of emo that like a little bit of cheese but a whole lot of heart should also give this one a try.
Oh, so can you tell me where the love's at? Fuck that, I don't even wanna feel anymore.
It's not a Liam the Music Reviewer roundup unless I talk about an up-and-coming hyperpop adjacent act, and June's is, fittingly, Juno. Their third EP is a solid blueprint for what they're capable of, and they even brush shoulders with some top quality fringe alumni like Delete Zeke, which leads to some exciting moments. I still think there's more to come from Juno, but with some tantalising emo heavy morsels like The Clothes Are Perfect, The Loved Ones is not merely just a beta test for their future.
How can you say you know what I'm feeling, know what I'm feeling, but you don't feel nothing?
It makes sense in the year that things are properly opening back up and the dance floors are open, that Drake would find it appropriate to surprise release an album that's full of bangers. You know me, I love a video game comparison to describe music because my brain is made of hummus and this is the only way I can convey my thoughts, but since 2015, Drake has been like FIFA. A new entry used to mean something, but now every release is more of a glorified patch or update, and at least in FIFA I can make myself look like Mr. Bean. I'll give Drake this. There was a teeny tiny attempt made, with House being at the front and centre of Honestly Nevermind, but with calling my name and Sticky, it just never really clicks. And I know the bed squeak sound effect's a staple of Jersey Club, but it really doesn't do Drake any favours when trying to beat off the goofy cartoony boy allegations. Look, this problem isn't as bad as Scorpion, and I didn't listen to Certified Lover Boy out with its awful singles that I was forced to hear, so this is probably an improvement based on that, and also because it doesn't last as long as a feature film. But should you check out this record based on the fact that it isn't as bad as those two other releases? Have you read its title? And that brings an end to another review roundup. If I were to pick my two favourites, it would be the new Everything Everything and Dual Lies, the latter of which deserves a lot more attention. But let me know what you make of all of these albums and my thoughts on them down in the comments below. And if there's a record you'd like to see me cover in the next review roundup, then why not join the Patreon, where you can automatically submit, suggest and vote on the albums that I cover in these videos. The voting for the next one will open on July 1st, so if that sounds fun to you, then why not come join us. But until next time, as always folks, stay safe and stay hydrated.